Devlin, Untamed.
People iOS, it's only sport. Martin Devlin, Lachlan War. The highlights package of today's show. The only independent daily radio sports program in New Zealand airs on the platform between 1 and 4 every afternoon. You've got to download the platform app, subscribe to Platform Plus. You can go back and listen to the whole show, all 3 hours of it. Or if you can't do that, well then, welcome aboard. 45 or so minutes worth of the day's sporting highlights. Fergus Burke, big topic of conversation today, up and off the Crusaders' first 5, taking the Saracens cash. We covered it with a couple of angles. Chris Jones out of the UK, where the news broke, and also the Crusaders CEO, Colin Mansbridge. His reaction to it all. The Phoenix play a championship decider this weekend. It's for the minor premiership, which has been relabelled the championship. It's hard to keep up these days. Look, the way that the A-League works is the top 6 go to the playoffs, so it's all about the grand final. However, if you do finish first or second, well, then you get home field advantage right throughout the playoffs. And CCM, defending champs this weekend. Phoenix 3 points clear. CCM got that superior goal diff. Simon Hill, A-League commentator, joined us to build up about this game. As well as that, regular correspondents, ARU, BTE and the ATM. That's Mark Watson, episode 77. We covered a lot of sport today, including also regular correspondents today were Andy Raymond, Unfiltered, the Brendan Telfer Experience, Mark Watson and the ATM podcast, episode 77. Plus, we went across the ditch to talk Australian rugby. Now that Joe Schmidt and Mike Cron are back together again, how worrisome are these Wallabies going to be? Brett McKay from RugbyPass. All of that on the show. Plus, we begin every day the same old way. Tablets in hand to gather my flock. It's time for a sermon. Should we be worried at all about Fergus Burke up and off? Let's go to the mountaintop.
We live in an amazing, amazing world, and it's wasted on the crappiest generation of just spoiled idiots.
And another promising New Zealand rugby player decides to forego the All Black jersey and head to the UK to pocket the big cash playing domestic club rugby up there. Fergus Burke, heir apparent, or so we all thought, to Richie Mo'unga at the Crusaders, will now leave at the end of the NPC season on a 3-year deal to replace Owen Farrell at Saracens. Big shoes to fill, massive shoes, in fact, to fill. And at just 24 years of age, Burke has it all in front of him. It's an amazing deal that he's landed, considering he's played just over 30 Super Rugby games and just under that at NPC level, meaning he's seriously untried. With 0 international experience, replacing a guy who's played over 100 tests for England and just about won everything there is to win in the game. So no pressure. But should we all be worried here in New Zealand? Is this just another example of the player drain crisis that we're all constantly told is afflicting our rugby here? I'm not so sure. A player of some promise, Fergus Burke has yet to fully establish himself at even Super Rugby level in New Zealand. He was always behind Mo'unga, played a bit more at fullback for the Crusaders than first 5 across those 30-odd games. Yes, he probably would have been the starter this year if he wasn't injured, but blowing that Achilles last October means that we'll barely see him in this year's comp at all. A few NPC matches before he goes away are going to show and prove, well, what exactly? NPC is not Super Rugby, which is not All Black level. Yes, we lack quality-proven test match hardened first 5s in this country right now. And to think that one of either Damien McKenzie or Stephen Perifetta, Brett Cameron or any of the current Superside first 5s will be the guy running the cutter for this year's All Blacks is scary at best, underwhelming at worst, or vice versa even. Come back, Bowden Barrett, and I think that's the intention of Scott Robertson. But was or is Fergus Burke even in that equation? Well, we don't know, and now we're never going to know. To me, he's a bit like perhaps a Charles Piutau, really good young player who everyone thought could have made it as a first-choice long-term All Black, but decided to choose the mega money and the lifestyle over the pursuit and the possible disappointment attached to striving to become a legendary AB. In the end, he, Burke, is just another one who's decided to go. And that's perfectly okay on all levels of the argument and the equation. To me, this is a bit bigger story than it is a big deal.
Devlin.
What do you want? We want information. Information. You won't get it.
The platform.
Headline, so Lachlan. And how concerning is it that the Hurricanes are dropping $1.5 million this year, or pretty close to it? Wellington Rugby, it was only weeks ago, announced that they're down $1 million. They're down $1 million from last year as well. I don't want to point the finger at just one or two things, but there are certain aspects of rugby in all of these franchise areas which are being wholly subsidised. And for how long can this continue? Unless New Zealand Rugby, you're happy. I'm talking about the women's game to keep dipping into the pocket and just every time there's an overdose, it's all right, we'll cover it. It's all right, we'll cover it. Because women's rugby is not making any money. And at some stage, the economic equation said it's got to. Is it that simple? How can it not be?
Well, that's the thing, is that from a business perspective, it is that simple, because if you get any sort of business that's run around the world by good business people who want to succeed and make money, then...
Well, that's the point of being in business.
Well, exactly. But then there'll be people who sit there and say that a sports team is not just a business, it's a cultural symbol, it's this or that.
Okay.
It's a vehicle for change in society.
It is all of those things, but at some stage, somebody has to pay.
Well, exactly. Well, the point where someone's got to pay is when you, who run the business, whether it's the board or the CEO or whatever, or your accountants, I don't know, needs to sit there and go, okay, we're actually losing too much money, where not only is there one portion of our organisation that's not profitable, the entire organisation is not profitable, and we're going to lose more or less the nexus or the beacon of our organisation, where, when it comes to the Hurricanes, is the men's team.
A couple of things here. The two things that won't happen is they won't cut the women's rugby, or they won't ask those players to take pay cuts, and they won't cut the fish heads, they won't cut the administrators. But, my question always is, would the people running these places be running their own personal affairs or businesses like this? Can you imagine, for example, anyone that sits on the New Zealand Rugby board, ladies and gentlemen, sitting there going, okay, I own a couple of houses, I do this, I do that, I've got a couple of businesses. I'm quite happy for them to be subsidising something that makes no money and will never ever return a profit. That's how I run my business. I start minus millions. No, they wouldn't. On we go, Lachlan. Let's talk sport.
I'll start off, well, you talked about it quite a bit there, obviously talked about it in your sermon, and I do sort of agree with you. I mean, my first thought when I saw the news that Fergus Burke is leaving the Crusaders, it's obviously not now, it's at the end of this year. He'll leave at the end of the NPC season, so he'll turn out for Canterbury and that. He's got an Achilles issue though, doesn't he? His return to play following injury, round 8 is when he's expected to come back for the Crusaders. I was like, oh, geez, there's a potential All Blacks first 5 who's just gone overseas. But then I thought, well, hold up, he hasn't actually played for the All Blacks yet. And even at Super Rugby level, he's not unproven, but he's not exactly massively proven.
He's only played 30-something games, mate.
Yeah. And a lot of it was actually at fullback last year. He played a lot of fullback in Richie Mwanga's last year, so his final year for the Crusaders. So I don't know. I'm not really losing my head over it. But it then does hammer home that if my immediate reaction is, oh dear, at Fergus Burke leaving, that we really are thin at first 5.
Yeah. I want to know what you think, Crusaders fans. 5050 on the text
Well, as
line
a Crusaders fan, long time, day one.
Day one. God, if your team wins this year, I'll be gutted and sick that you've jumped them when they were 0-5.
I know.
You've jumped them at their lowest point ever.
And then they
in
start
their
winning.
Yeah, that's it.
It's the opposite of the Broncos.
Well, you've actually got cred here, you see, because you jumped on them not when they'd won, when they were 0-5, when nobody was supporting them.
Yeah, it's great. Sam Whitelock has shut the door on a potential return to the All Blacks, having announced he will retire from all rugby after fulfilling his obligations with French club Pau. Is that how you pronounce it? Pau?
Pow. You say Pow, I say Pow.
Now, I fell into the trap of actually thinking that he'd already retired.
Same.
And was he reiterating his retirement? No, he'd actually gone to France to play some rugby. That's all done. He's now retiring. And good. I'm actually glad he's not coming back to New Zealand to play for the All Blacks. I'm pretty happy that's not happening. I just thought once you're done, like he announced his retirement, he said it was going to be his last year. In New Zealand Rugby. Like, when you make that decision, just let the man make the decision.
Again, I thought he'd already made it.
Yeah, exactly.
Wish you all the best, Sam. Alongside Colin Meads, the two best locks that have ever played for New Zealand.
Really?
Absolutely. Well, it has to be. I mean, Sir Pine Tree, as we stand and salute the tree, as we always do.
Stand up. Even the dogs are standing up.
It's bring your dog to work day to day, people. We'll let you know more about that later. But Sam White, like 155,000 tests, made 2 World Cups. I mean, let me go on. But no, he is. No question about it. Alongside
All Blacks and Hurricanes halfback Cam Roigard will be sidelined for at least 6 months after having knee surgery, set to miss the rest of the Super Rugby Pacific season and most, if not all, of this year's All Blacks tests. That's not good. More injury issues. Warriors half Luke Metcalf will miss the majority of the NRL season, with the club confirming he has broken the tibia in his right leg. He had surgery on that yesterday. Tickets for the main racing days at the Supercars Topol round are now sold out. Tickets still available, though, for the Friday. If I'm not mistaken, there's only practice on the Friday. The inaugural ITM Taupo Super 400 is taking place at the end of this month, 19th to 21st of April, and will be the sport's inaugural visit to Taupo and their return to New Zealand. They haven't raced there since 2022. I went to that round as the last one at Pukekohe. Premier League this morning, which is weird because it feels like the weekend's just ended. We've already got games again. Quite a few games on, actually. Newcastle, a lot of draws. Newcastle, Everton drawing 1-1. Burnley, Wolves 1-1. West Ham, Tottenham 1-1. Tottenham had a chance to go up to fourth with a win and a certain number of goals scored, but no, it didn't work out. Nottingham Forest beating Fulham 3-1. Why is that noteworthy? Well, it actually helps Forest ideally stay in the league for another year. And also, Chris Wood, New Zealander, scored another goal. He's got, 11 or 12 for the season?
11 for the season now.
Yeah, it's pretty damn good.
66 in total in the Premier League. He's only 4 behind Eric Cantona.
And Bournemouth beat Palace 1-0. Bournemouth continued to have a pretty damn impressive season. They're now unbeaten in their last 5, including 4 wins. They didn't start off so well, then went really well, then a little bit of a dip, and then now they're back winning again. But Bournemouth having a great season. And just finally, I want to talk about the NBA because I love the stage of the NBA season, and there are a number of important games on today. Very tight races for playoff spots. Obviously, the top 6 get you into the playoffs, then 7 through to 10 is the play-in the NBA. Right now, in terms of teams relevant to the playoff push, the Lakers and Raptors, it's halftime in their game. The Lakers up 64-58 at halftime. 76ers and Thunder. Thunder lead by 3, 40-37 on the road for them. Miami Heat at home to the New York Knicks. The Heat are up by 10 in the second quarter. Very early days in the Minnesota Timberwolves Houston Rockets game. The Rockets, by the way, have won something like 11 of their last 12. They did lose the other day to the Mavericks. Before that, they'd won 11 in a row. Denver Nuggets play later today. They're fighting for the 1 seed in the West. The Cleveland Cavaliers are on a bit of a tailspin. They've got some injury concerns, but still in a playoff spot. Golden State Warriors, your Warriors, up against the Dallas Mavericks. Sacramento Kings up against LA Clippers. Some good games on today. That's what's making news, Martin.
Devlin. The platform.
Fergus Burke then. So, everyone thought that he was going to replace Richie Mo'unga as the pivot in charge of the Crusaders, but injured last year, did his Achilles in October, haven't sighted him at all in Super Rugby this year. He may get to play a few NPC games at the end of the year and hasn't at all appeared in an All Black jersey. So is this a great loss for New Zealand Rugby? He's one of those names that was in the mix, you would have thought, to replace either Beauden Barrett or Richie Mo'unga as All Black first 5, but now we won't know. So, a huge big deal, or is it just a bigger news story? Couple of different angles. Chris Jones out of the UK, RugbyPass, Times Online, and then Colin Mansbridge, CEO of the Crusaders. You'll hear from both men right now. Here's a young man who hasn't even established himself with the All Blacks yet, and he's done the Charles Pear Tower. He's decided that, no, my future lies overseas in England and for Saracens.
Absolutely. Look, about 2 weeks ago, we had this name pop up as the guy who was going to fill the huge void at Saracens created when Owen Farrell goes over to Racing 92 for €900,000 a season. They had 2 marquee players at Saracens. A new deal means they can only have one, so that's going to be Maro Itoje. They had to get that huge amount of money out of their wage bill, which created a major problem because he's played over 250 games for Saracens, 18 years he's been there. He is Mr. Saracen. So how do you replace Owen Farrell? Well, you go and look at Garbisi, but he goes and steps the money down in Toulon. So then you go down under and you come up with the name Fergus Burke, who Gregor Townsend wanted to bring to Glasgow and make Scottish.
Yeah, look, this is such a pressure position, as you say, following in the footsteps of one of your greatest ever first 5s for England. He's 24 years young. Does he have the experience right now to just step straight into that role?
Well, not at Saracens, not the level they're playing at at the moment. They're going for all the titles as usual. Look, they're a team in transition. They've got a number of good young players coming through, and they want him to be the leader of the young players. Now, according to Mark McCall, they're very astute director of rugby. Fergus wants to take his game to another level. Well, I'm sure a lot of New Zealand fans will say, well, he hasn't actually reached the first level yet, so let's see what he can do going up 4 or 5 levels, because that's what he's going to have to do to compete against the top 14 teams in the Champions Cup. And, that's pretty rarefied stuff. It's just below international level. And, he has got the pressure of being the new Owen Farrell along with the fact that we want to find out whether, in fact, he's fully recovered from an Achilles injury, which, as we know, is one of the most difficult to come back from and just regain your confidence in your running, your ability to step. There's lots of sort of question marks about this, and they don't expect to see him till the summer till he's absolutely right. And then he's going to suddenly fit in to a club which many people say are just on that tipping edge of going away from what they were, which is the most dominant force in England and at times in Europe, to being, one of the top 4 or 5 teams, which is not what they want to be and what their backers don't want them to be. So it's a massive call to go for Fergus, but what an opportunity for a 24-year-old.
As far as international rugby goes, he's played for the under-20 New Zealand side. I'm not going to call them the All Blacks, the junior All Blacks, or whatever you want to call them. Apparently he's available for England. He does qualify, and he does qualify for Scotland as well. So a range of choices, but it doesn't look as though the jersey's going to be black.
No, and if he's ever been on holiday to Wales, we'll have him as well.
Go on.
And I'm sure there must be some kind of Irish connection in there. So all 4 could probably be in there bidding for him. Look, England are not exactly short of outside halves at the moment. Scotland are really concerned because if something happens to Finn Russell, well, it's pretty thin after that. So you can see why Gregor wanted to place him at Glasgow. But, Glasgow are one of only two professional teams in Scotland, and they will not have the sort of budget to compete against someone like Saracens, putting something on the table and saying to Fergus, this is what we're going to give you, and here are the incremental increases as the years go on. It was a no contest as far as Glasgow trying to keep him out of the clutches of Saracens.
What does it say about All Black rugby from your distance as well? The black jersey isn't worth as much anymore? Is it just such a huge amount of money that a young man can't turn it down? Once he decides that he goes and he plays for somebody else, he ain't coming back and playing for us.
Exactly. So this is obviously been a family decision. You don't just do this on your own. They've looked at the lie of the land. They've looked at the sort of contenders for the All Black 10 jersey, and at 24, he's not your under 20s guy just coming out and pushing for recognition. England have got a couple of Smiths, Marcus and Finn, who are looking really, really good. George Ford doesn't look like he's going anywhere soon. So you would have thought that if he really just wanted international rugby, he would have listened more to the Gregor Townsend cause. And there's no reason why he can't still opt to play for Scotland. They've got a couple of guys, Sean Maitland, another New Zealander at Saracens, who had a great career with Scotland. Andy Christie's just broken his arm, the Scotland flanker. He plays there as well. So he could still play for Scotland out of Saracens. The thing the Saracens have gone for, it's a monetary thing, because as an English qualified player, there is an incremental sum of money coming from the RFU for every one of your players in your squad who is English qualified. So there was an incentive for him to be brought into Saracens. If he then opts for Scotland, that changes the goalposts a bit. But, if he gets a good offer from Scotland in terms of how much they're paying to play Test rugby, why not listen to it? I mean, it's a great opportunity for him. It doesn't mean he's going to play for England. He could still opt for Scotland.
To hear the full interview, download the platform at the App Store. Via Platform Plus, you can go back and listen to the whole show and all of the interviews in full.
Devlin.
Yes, can they do it?
The platform.
Colin, what's your reaction to Fergus Burke leaving to go to Saracens at the end of the season?
Obviously, he's eligible for 3 nations, I think, ourselves, Scotland, and England. So we're disappointed to see him go. He's a good man. He's been here most of the time I've been here, and and really, really worked hard on himself and around the environment. So we are sad to see him go, but understand completely when you're eligible for 3 countries, it probably makes your decision making a little bit more complex.
Did you try and compete with the money at all that they're offering?
I think I think the short answer is it's probably not just about the money. I think there's also, they've been fairly clear about talking to him about what his aspirations could be. So I think it's not just about money. There's also experience. We've seen it with other athletes who've made calls like that in future to grow themselves with other experiences. So so we're disappointed to see him go, but we're really stoked that we're going to get performance out of him at the back end of this season.
Where was he, Colin, in terms of your first fives at this, in your own thinking at the start of this year? Because, everyone else, I think, was probably thinking he's the heir apparent to Richie Mo'unga. Is that how you saw him?
I think he was definitely in the mix. There's no doubt about that. I think it's one of those interesting things that every year things change and athletes pop up out of nowhere, and then and structures change, and for the athletes themselves, they obviously have to make sure they're playing the best footy they can, and hopefully are injury free to give themselves the best chance they can. Ferg's made an immense contribution in his time here, and we were really excited about what he could bring. But again, I look at eligibility for Three Nations, and I can understand how he made the decision he has.
Does it alter in any way the way that you think about, or the team will think about using him from now on into the end of the season, or are you just pragmatic enough to say, hey, look, if he's the best in that position and Penny wants him, let's just play him regardless of whether he stays, goes, or whatever?
I think that's the thing. I think Rob will make calls based on what he thinks is the best for the team. So it'll be team first, no doubt about that. And it'll be going as deep into this competition as he possibly can. So that'll be the driving force and choosing the right athletes. And you've got to be a bit careful about just cutting someone because they're not available for next season. He's already made some great contributions to the jersey. So I think there will be an eye to think about how we perform in the back end of this comp. And I think that'll be pressure on, there'll be athletes putting their hands up to put pressure on selection, and hopefully we've got a fit and able squad coming into the after the bye, and that'll just create a bit more of that intensity that I know the players love having.
And he's had 30-something appearances in Super Rugby and just under for the NPC. So you've invested some. Does it feel a little easier that he hasn't, played 50 or 60 matches or something like that, and that you're absolutely counting on? Because by the sounds of that, it feels like you're thinking that you've got able-bodied backup regardless.
I think this will sound a little bit sickly, Martin, but please be a bit with me.
Sure.
We take the view, and we take the view in this place inside the building. We take the view: how do we set athletes up to be the best they can be? So it's when I talk to Angus and the board and others around here, all the conversation here is we're a development-led organisation, so we want athletes to achieve their performance, to achieve their career goals. So whether that's playing for the All Blacks, ideally, or another international side. So that's sort of the mindset we take: is how can we help the athlete get the best out of themselves? And so when you lose coaches, sometimes it's a bittersweet moment. When you lose players for other reasons, it's a bittersweet moment. But it's not normally. That's our job. Our job is developing athletes to be better and to become internationals. And so when that's your job, if they've taken a chance where they see themselves maybe in an international career, then you've got to just say, well, you've done your job, so you can't be too disappointed by it.
To hear the full interview, download the platform at the App Store. Via Platform Plus, you can go back and listen to the whole show and all of the interviews in full.
Next!
Colin Mansbridge on the back of Chris Jones there. How big a deal, Lachlan? Are you worried at all?
No.
Do you think of the player drain?
No.
Look, every time a young player goes overseas, turns his back on wanting to wear an All Black jersey, I think you've got to be a little concerned, and it's obviously a flag for New Zealand rugby and all of that. But I just think in terms of this particular player, no disrespect to him at all, but I just think he's unproven. I think he's unproven at the highest levels, and by that I mean Super Rugby and international rugby. He could have been the guy at the start of the season when Mo'unga, we knew last year, was leaving. Fergus Burke. The other guys that they've got, your Rileys and your Reihanas and your Taha Kamara, these guys, these names weren't being mentioned. It was Fergus Burke.
Yeah.
So that means that he was obviously number one in the pecking order before the Achilles happened.
Yeah.
But after an Achilles, especially playing that position, and I go back to Justin Marshall when Justin did his in 1998, and he'll be the first to admit, I'm sure, that he was never the same player. John Kirwan was never the same player. Christian Cullen, after he did his knee, was never the same player. These are, when you're a guy that pivots off that leg, and your speed is generated by that, and you change your direction, change your paces. I need to see him play a succession of games before I'd be, oh my God, he's leaving. And so I think we'll talk about this more in the Type 5 people. I think we're up Stook Street. We do have a shovel, but it's not a big shovel in terms of our new number 9 and number 10 for the All Blacks. But I'm not. It's not to me. It's not Damien McKenzie leaving. Okay?
No. Well, hold up. Is that you giving Damo some praise?
Well, no, Damo is the All Black first 5, unless somebody else comes along in the meantime. This is Beauden Barrett. Damo is the All Black first 5.
No. You've been saying for so long that you don't want him to be the first 5. You want it to be Beauden.
Well, I do want it to be Beauden, yes. To start the season, I want it to be Beauden.
So then who is it when Beauden
I need to see Damien McKenzie
steps away?
Well, whoever it is, they've got to have more than one game, half a game, 2 games, 5 games.
See, this is actually where I think Fergus Burke leaving is a real issue. Because as much as we'll sit there and say, oh, he hasn't lit up the world, and, in terms of Super Rugby, we haven't come away from games going, oh my gosh, have you seen this kid Fergus Burke? He didn't light us up the way that others have in the past. He's not Dan Carter. You didn't buy Dan Carter, Saracens. You're calling him Fergalicious. There's no Dan Carter attached. No, there's no. But the point is that we don't have an obvious person to step in.
No, we don't. And he's not it anyway.
Then again, Beauden Barrett was, to be fair, Beauden Barrett was a little bit like that. As much as we saw the talent, we weren't really writing home about it when we saw his first year or two in Super Rugby and NPC. I tell you what, my earliest memory of Beauden Barrett was that's such a weird name. Beauden, I've never heard that name before. That was my earliest memory. And then all of a sudden, when he started getting more games for the Hurricanes and year after year, I was like, actually, this guy's half decent. Then he usurped Aaron Cruden is our main first 5 once Dan Carter retired. So look, but the back to the main issue is we don't actually have another person.
No, we don't.
I don't have much confidence in Damo being able to play test level first 5. Then again, I'll give him a chance. And then who? Honestly, aside from him and Beauden Barrett, then it's what? Stephen Perifetta. Because his team's winning, Brett Cameron probably should be. He's played for. He's a one test All Black.
Yeah, that's right.
Who else? That's where you've actually got to be a bit concerned that, okay, maybe Fergus Burke could have been that guy.
ARU Andy Raymond Unfiltered. Where is Roger Tuivasa-Sheck best position? We've been discussing and debating this since the season started, and will continue as Charnze Nicoll-Klokstad reclaims that number 1 jersey for the Rabbitohs this weekend. An Australian perspective on the vexed question about RTS. This is Tony talking about Roger versus Charnze, RTS versus CNK at fullback. It's about 40 seconds. Have a listen to this and then I want your thoughts.
You got Roger and Tane at the back, all right? And Sean Johnson's running to the line, and you've got Jackson on the outside here, like you did when he scored his try on the weekend, and he goes to throw the fake pass and hits him. They're not worried about Tane Tuipaki at the back. But when you got Roger there, the centre's packing his pants. Or going, mate, it's Roger Tuivasa-Sheck. And the reason why he's packing his pants if I was playing centre is because if I don't get to him quick enough, his footwork is too good, like you've seen on all the memes, where he makes you look like an idiot.
Yeah,
defensively.
He's breaking your ankles, yeah.
So the mind games that he plays when he doesn't have the football on a defensive line, most coaches will be going, thank God you're putting him back in the centres. Seriously, if I was the offensive coach for another South Sydney this weekend, I'd be going, well, Charnze is going to be back there. He's going to be underdone. Thank God we're not dealing with Roger.
What are your thoughts on this, Andy, finally? Because it's a great debate to have, and it's one of those ones we always call a selection headache, which is really peculiar because I think as a coach, he's probably more clear in his mind, Andrew Webster, than the rest of us. But where do you think, given what you've seen in the last few weeks, Roger should be playing?
Personal opinion, I think Andrew Webster needs to stick to what he said pre-season for now, and that was Roger Tuivasa-Sheck has been bought as a centre, and Charnze Nicoll-Klokstad, because he was so good last year, gets the first real crack at fullback. And I think that shows the players, the staff, and the people within the 4 walls at the Warriors that you're a man of your word, and when you say something, it happens. And I think that's really important for a coach. Not that he's going to lose the dressing room, because it's a really difficult position for Andrew Webster to be in. There's a lot of public pressure saying Roger should be at the fullback and Charnze should be in the centres. This is what I'm expecting. I'm expecting nothing out of the ordinary over the next 2 or 3 weeks in terms of game management and game style. But I think as everyone gets a little bit more comfortable, I think you're going to see Roger playing a very different role at centre. I think you're going to see almost a Charnze Nicoll-Klokstad on one side and a Roger Tuivasa-Sheck on the other side, almost playing dual fullback roles with the footy, but defensively it'll be Charnze at the back. So I think we're going to see something a little bit different. It's been a long time since a coach has really tried to change up a style or change up a formula. I think we're going to see it with Andrew Webster. So keep an eye on Roger. Probably not the next fortnight, as I said, but over the next 4 or 5 weeks, I reckon he'll be playing a very, very different role.
The Tight Five.
5 separate sporting topics. When the bell dings, we move on to the next topic. There might be more than 5. Fergalicious, we've spoken a little bit about this. That's what they're calling him on the Saracens Club Rugby website. Fergus Burke, is he going to be missed in New Zealand rugby? The Phoenix need 27,250 spectators across the next couple of games to break their cumulative season attendance record that was set in the 2011-12 season. So an average of about 13,500 for the next 2 games, Wellington. You can do that, can't you? Bring your dog to work day. Lachlan, how's that going? CCM, speaking of the Phoenix, scored in the 93rd minute after 3 o'clock. Simon Hill joined us to talk about the title decider. Is it that this weekend? Still a couple of games to go after that, but CCM away. Tough call for the next this weekend. Chris Wood, Forest, 11 goals this season, 66 in total. Extraordinary. We spoke about this yesterday. Roygaard is out for 6 months. Metcalf is out for 6 months. So great reflection on the New Zealand health system that both of these young men could get in and get their injuries fixed within about 24 hours of one breaking a leg and other busting his knee. I guess that's why you have medical insurance, huh? Pick your All Black first 5 and second 5, though, right now, Lachlan, if you're a Razor, right now. And the old chance at fullback, Roger in the centre, because Andrew Webster stuck to his guns. Chance comes back. That's CNK over RTS, number 1 for the Warriors away Rabbits this weekend. Kicking it off with Fergalicious briefly again. I just haven't seen enough of this guy to be too miserable about the fact that he's taken big money. Congratulations to him. I'm not sure that he's on exactly what they would have been paying Owen Farrell.
No, it's no way.
But at 24 years old, to get the chance to go and play in England in those competitions he can represent, as we got told by both Mansbridge and Chris Jones last hour, for England and Scotland, so the chance he can still play international rugby. I mean, look, this is the world is your oyster. The world is at your feet. You're a young man and you've been offered that. It'd be a hard thing to turn down, wouldn't it?
Yeah, without a doubt.
All you've got at the end, on the other side of the argument, if you did your pros and cons list, your plus and minus list, is you've got, the big minus is no All Black jersey. But that's no guarantee anyway.
No. And I think it might have been Tony Kimby said this yesterday during the Rugby League hour, and I sort of, with my mic off, scoffed a bit. But I think he was right. I just don't think the allure of the All Black jersey is there anymore.
I disagree with that. I think it's always there, but I just think
nowhere near to the same extent as, say, 10 years ago.
I just think that the temptress is out there too, and the temptress wagging that foxtail with the English pounds on the end of it, mate.
But that's always been there, though, hasn't it?
Well, okay, it comes down to, I think, is the self-belief as well. Do you honestly think you're going to claim that jersey and keep it for 5 to 6 to 10 years? Because if you did, you would make more money than you would going to Saracens. But I think Charles Piutau was in the same position. Good player. Was he guaranteed, though? Because he had other players around him.
I think Charles Piutau was a bit similar to Lester Whanganukau. I think the jersey was there if you stuck around. Absolutely.
But there's no guarantee for Fergus, is there?
No. He's not on the same level as Piutau. He could have played on the wing or at fullback, and he would have jostled with Ben Smith.
And even if he had a standout Super Rugby season, which he's not going to have because he's only going to enter at round 8, round 9, something like that anyway, right? and then he's going to play some NPC. He might have been selected for the end-of-year tour, but is he going to make the All Blacks for the first test of the year? No.
No,
he's not.
injured, no.
Well, that's right, because he hasn't played enough rugby. So.
I also think partly because he's in my sort of age bracket. I think he's slightly younger than me.
24, I think, yeah.
24 years, just a couple of years younger than me. I also think with people my age, I'm not saying this wasn't the case, say 15, 20, 25 years ago, but it very much feels the case now. What people my age see as success or see as exciting or see as a goal or the pinnacle of your young life is to go overseas and travel and ideally move overseas and get a job overseas.
Make a heap of cash.
Exactly.
And make a heap of cash.
I think was the reason why... the travelling side of it was the reason why Chanel Harris-Tavita took a year off from the Warriors. He just wanted to take a break and then go and travel. And I think it's the reason why Fergus Burke's doing it. You're getting paid really well. You're getting to play overseas at a big club, play at a high level of competition, get paid well, and you can travel in your spare time.
Plus, you've also got that carrot of both England and Scotland, who both want you to play for them.
Exactly.
Chris Wood, let's just do this briefly. 11 goals scored again for Forest today. Very valuable win. 8 games left. They're battling relegation. But again, that's the 5th time that he has scored double-digit goals in a season. He's got 66 in total. He's 4 behind Eric Cantona. He's ahead of David Beckham. It's just an extraordinary achievement. And I keep going back to the useless strikers who are paid extraordinary amounts of money to play for the club that I've supported for the last 45 or so years. And Chris Wood's banging them in.
Yeah.
And he's scored a cracker today.
I saw a great stat, and I'm trying to go back on my Twitter feed to find it, and I don't think I'm going to be able to find it. But it listed Alexander Isak for Newcastle, who's one of the best strikers in the world, I think, at least. You've then got Chris Wood in second, and you've got Erling Haaland in third, of course, Man City. And it was goals per 90 minutes. And the best in the league is Alexander Isak with something like 0.9. Then it's Chris Wood with 0.85, and then it was Haaland with 0.82.
Do not underestimate how good this guy is. Top text, Martin, stick with the Lakers, please. My Chiefs have enough issues without you jumping on board, says Cam. Cam, I understand. I am all over the Lakers.
Sorry,
I'm
Cam.
all over the Lakers.
No, I can't approve of that, Cam. I cannot approve of that because I don't want my Lakers... Look, we're cursed anyway because LeBron's on our team. We're never going to have a smooth-sailing, easy-going couple of years. That happened in Miami to an extent. It ain't happening for us. We're going to lose to teams we shouldn't be losing to. We're going to beat teams we shouldn't be beating. Then we're going to get to the playoffs and go on this absurd run and then get dicked in the conference finals.
Bye.
Denver.
Yeah. Who?
Jokic.
Yeah. This is my favourite thing about the NBA, because the NBA is all about the athleticism of the players, and you have got a big, kind of goofy looking Serbian guy who just dicks everyone on court every time he plays. He's unplayable.
Yeah, there was a hint of that when Dirk Nowitzki was playing really well. People didn't like him and respect him because he was European.
Everyone hated the step back one leg shot, right? Because at 7 foot you should be going to the basket.
Exactly, you're exactly right. You should be dominating defensively. You should be playing inside. Why are you shooting threes?
I'll never forget that brilliant footage of Game 5 where LeBron and your boy D Wade are sniggering about, I might have the flu, because Nowitzki was under the flu, right?
Game 4, I think.
Game 4 it was, and he comes out and he monsters your mates. Before we get on to C&K versus RTS, Roygaard and Metcalf. Oh, God, you hate it when players get these kind of injuries, don't you? Luke Metcalf, we stood next to him, interviewing him, talked about his love for Man United, everything. Lachlan, it was only weeks ago, mate. It was about 6 or 8 weeks ago, wasn't it? And you could see the brightness in his eyes. He was so looking forward to the season and everything else. And now he's got a broken tibia and he's going to be out for the best part of 6 months. It is a cruel, cruel sport.
It is. And he had injury troubles last year, Metcalf. Sorry, you're talking about Metcalf, not Roygaard.
Yeah, we'll get on to Roygaard in a second.
And I think he got one in pre-season that kept him out for a while. I think towards the end of the season, either his form went down or he was injured again. Really good young half.
Yeah,
attacks the line, athletic. He's absolutely part of the Warriors' future plans. I don't know if he's a 7. I think he's very much a 6. He's great with the ball in his hands as opposed to out of his hands and passing it, directing traffic and kicking the ball. Real shame. And that's a nasty injury as well. He's going to be out for a long time, and it's one of the... I feel like bone injuries are always easier to come back from than muscle or tendon injuries, which I don't think I'm breaking any new ground. I think that's a given. But that when you do your tibia, that's a pretty nasty one.
Yeah. Well,
that's
same as
really
Roygaard, mate. Patella tendon, which basically that holds the whole knee together. And so, again, I wish them both the best. I was being facetious before about you got to wear Sprigs into National Health these days. I mean, you get reconstructive surgery within minutes, don't you? But, I mean, that is the advantage of having medical insurance, ladies and gentlemen. If these guys were on the waiting list, well, they probably wouldn't be playing again, right? Couple of topics to go. RTS versus CNK. Andrew Webster stuck to his guns. And Andy Raymond was talking about that about half an hour ago. And he raised a great point, I think, in that in terms of his players, his squad, the messages he's been sending, Andrew Webster has no choice. I'm not so sure that Roger will not be seen in the number 1 jersey later on in this competition because he's got options, Andrew Webster. But Charnze coming back from injury, he has to take that jersey. I understand why he's been selected there for the Rabbitohs, despite Roger's form in that position.
Yeah, I think the issue was, I really like, I give it to the Warriors, but I really like Andrew Webster. And I don't really want to criticise him with anything because I'm not going to sit here and act like I know more about rugby league. I don't. Jeez. But I don't think he should have committed anyone to the jersey. He did that at the end of last year. I think he did it even when they signed Roger, which was before the end of last season. He said, no, Charnze is the fullback. And then he said it in the off-season a couple of times, Charnze is the fullback. He shouldn't have done that. He should have said, well, Charnze was our fullback last year.
Yeah,
now,
that's a good point.
We've got options now. Charnze right now is in the running for the jumper, but I won't commit to anything because, hey, we could have injuries. Someone could have a blindingly brilliant game. The one jumper, everyone is in the mix for that jersey. He should have done that because then it would have made the whole process easier now of potentially switching. Now, the Warriors don't need to switch in terms of what Andrew Webster's plans are, going from Charnze to Roger or even to a picky or whatever, but because they're winning a couple of games. If they're starting to lose games, that's when you've got to start to look at it. Because as much as, shouldn't have lost that Melbourne game because you're up by 8 points with 2 or 3 minutes to go. And the Cronulla game, again, you were up by 2 scores, should have been up by 4 at half time and you lost that game. But really good bits out of those games and you've just got 2 wins and you're taking on a Rabbitoh side that you should be beating this weekend. Until they start losing, you don't need to worry about it.
That's exactly right. All right, finally then. Bring your dog to work day, not an official day. I mean, there's only 2 of us in the office, so we can make it every day. And so Puppy's in here. Well, actually, they're both in there with you. So,
was Puppy in here with me? No, he's not.
Isn't he? Well, where the hell is he then, mate? Oh, no, here he is. Sorry, he's just...
No, I've got I can't call her a puppy because she's 6 years old.
Okay, so Lachlan's got Hera, and he's looking after her, and I got Puppy, and Puppy's 6 months old, so 6 years, 6 months, and they have just not spent a second together. There was a hiss and a growl to start with.
Yeah, they don't get on.
I'm trying to get Presley to stop barking in the ladies' faces, because that's his go-to at the moment. He just goes up and right in your face.
He barks.
Just kind of chill out. Well, ask her for her name, get her a drink, just sit and have some casual
find
chat.
a couple of good pickup lines. Don't just run in there with your pants
just
off.
go, we're going dancing. No, we're not. Just maybe work towards that, mate.
Well, in defence of Prez, Hera is a tough nut to crack. She is a bit of a timid dog. She's pretty playful and excited, but you've got to win her over. Like, she growled at you when you first walked in, but then she was all right after a while. And then Prez just jumped all over her and then started barking, and she snapped and wasn't having any of it. And since that, it's like an argument between a husband and a wife, and you both go overboard, and then you're kind of waiting for, you're both stubborn, and you're waiting for the other one to come and apologise, and the other one wants the same thing and wants the other one to come and apologise, and no one's doing anything.
I'll keep you updated throughout the show.
Scrum though.
ATM episode 77, the Mark Watson podcast, normally on a Tuesday on our program, but because the days have all kind of jumped on all over each other following the long weekend, Watto joined us today. One of the many topics that we talked about were the comments from Lance Dry, the Wellington Blaze coach, female cricket, and the White Ferns. And are you allowed to criticise this team? And how poor have they been in terms of their fielding and their running between the wickets? Because Lance Dry said, he thinks that big improvement is needed. Watto on that. Let us start with Fergus Burke. And he signed for Saracens, 24 years old, obviously going for a crap load of money there, Mark. But what does it tell you about the attraction or not of Super Rugby and even the All Black jersey, which he's now obviously giving up?
Yeah, it's a fascinating one, isn't he? Because I guess he is the Crusaders' hopes going forward, and he's been out injured with that Achilles injury. So we've seen, I think we saw Riley Hohepa take the field, didn't we, for the Crusaders on Friday night? And he looks the goods as well. But it's a real concern when you lose another promising first 5'8", just starting to get some more game time, just starting to sort of come into his own, a little bit of a late developer. And, potentially in time could have ended up being sort of a second, third string All Black first 5. Who knows? Possibly could have ended up being the first 5 for the All Blacks. But look, these young guys have to weigh this up. As I've said in the past, I just hope sometimes these player agents sit down with the players and go, are you going to be okay when you're 50 about this decision? When you're sitting there and you're financially set up, but you will possibly never an All Black where you could have been. Are you going to be okay with that? Because and I know, Martin, that your belief system in your 20s is very different to what your belief system is in your 50s and 60s. And you look back on some of the stuff you did in 20s or some of the decisions you made, and you go, I was just a twat, or I was just a bit of, a little bit arrogant, or whatever it is. But yeah, look, the Super Rugby competition, the domestic game in New Zealand is just so fragmented at the moment. Talk of no NPC sort of beyond 226. We only really got the derbies to look forward to in Super Rugby. So much emphasis placed on the All Blacks, and I can understand why they're only an injury away, and maybe they're earning $1 million a year, and you say, hey, I'm 24 years of age, I can set myself up for the rest of my life now, and off I go. But I go back, Martin, and I was just reading an article I wrote for Stuff a few years ago about. I wrote about 3 or 4 at one point there, and I was just talking about when Steve Hansen took 52 players away, and half the team went to the Northern Hemisphere, and we almost had this franchise All Black team playing against Japan, and so many players at the time who weren't of All Black quality got All Black caps, and I think that is part of it. Have we through this guys getting a test cap here for 2 minutes and stuff? Have we somehow devalued what it means to be an All Black?
White Ferns, I was so pleased to hear Lance Dry. Now, we tried to get him on the show today, but he says he's tied up in meetings all day. Well, you've got to take him on face value. I mean,
he's been pulled in, hasn't he?
Well, he has. This is as soon as he made those comments about the fielding and the running between the wickets hasn't improved at all, I thought finally at last somebody in a position of authority who knows is actually saying what the rest of us are seeing, that the cricket is actually really poor to watch. The women's domestic season finished a couple of weeks ago, and he's now tied up in meetings all day. I always thought that, and look, and I'll quite happily promote the conspiracy theory here. I thought as soon as he said that, New Zealand cricket are going to be on to him within about 30 seconds and saying enough of that. It's the last time you speak about that. No one's actually allowed to talk about those things, which are glaring and obvious. And we've been talking about it for weeks. A White Fern side that is seriously underperforms. They've got 3 or 4 good players, and that's it. And the rest are club cricketers. And I'm not being disrespectful here. But, when Sophie Devine says we're poor in the field, she's the captain. When a coach of a women's team says the fielding, the running between the wickets. If you remember, go back to the T20 World Cup where we were staging matches here, Mark, and some of the drop catches, honestly, you're looking at it going, you want equality, you want equity of payment, you want all of these things, but you're just not that good enough to get it at the moment. Is that a fair comment?
I think it's absolutely brilliantly summed up. Look, I had a friend of mine who wrote something up on Facebook, and I just thought he summed it up nicely. And he basically went along the lines of, why is nobody allowed to hold women's cricket to a similar skill standard as the men's game? We all understand that, the men will always be physically superior in terms of athleticism, speed and power just through, basic genetics. But there is no excuses there, Martin, for the dreadful lack of skill. The technique, the shot selection, the drop catches, the poor fielding, even the game IQ, it's all woeful. And as you say, the fact that nobody's allowed to call it for what it is nothing short of patronising. And these girls would not beat the Mount Abbott Grammar second 11 in a game of cricket. And I seriously mean that, like the boys' side. They wouldn't have a hope in hell. And you can apply the same to the women's rugby team. I think, there are clearly some players who genuinely are, I think, a world class and have the same sort of skill set. And you watch them and they've got the athleticism of what you'd see from Tana Rumanga or what you might have seen from Julian Severe back in his day with the likes of the Portia Woodmans. Women's football's the same. I think the standard was just dreadful at the Football World Cup. And I'm not sure what it is about teams, but they're the ones that are always crying the loudest about pay parity. They're the ones that have been elevated well above their level and suddenly being put on par with our men's, that we should be treating them the same, that they're elite athletes. And they're not. They are, most of them, in all fairness, from my background in sport, are nothing short of club athletes. I want to know where the Dana Johansons of this world are. Last week trying to create some big political feminist issue around the Māori Cup and how that might be sexist, calling it the Māori Regatta, because it's predominantly pointing at the Māori Cup, which is the boys' race. Where are they sitting down and writing the critical analysis of this women's cricket team? Where are they sitting down asking for the coach Klimkova to be sacked from the women's football team for just a series of dreadful results? Yet what I will say is, the sports where I think women, have absolute parity with the men. So I look at Erica Fairweather in the pool, remarkable athlete, swims as beautifully and as well as any of the men. I think Lydia Ko probably has the best technical game of any golfer in New Zealand. Her short game's as good or better than probably Ryan Fox's. An absolute privilege and a pleasure to watch. You go and have a look at, what's her name in this women's sprinting at the moment. You watch that, it's as good as anything the men produce. You never hear them jumping up and down saying, hey, pay me. But no, it always comes from our women cricketers and, the reason we're no good is because we don't have time. Rubbish. I remember training 35, 40-hour weeks and I still held down a part-time job as a lifeguard at the Auckland Tepid Baths. Stop making excuses. Stop pushing and shoving this down our throat. Get out there and critique them because the standard is bloody awful. And that's part of the reason, Martin, why no one's watching the stuff, mate. Hey, we give them out there, got the beautiful grounds and we treat them like they're the men's teams. And I just don't think they're deserving of it. And I think part of the problem is we've put them up on a pedestal. They believe their own damn hype, Martin.
To hear the full interview, download the platform at the App Store. Via Platform Plus, you can go back and listen to the whole show and all of the interviews in full. The Knicks, riding high, top of the table as far as the A-League is concerned. Only lost 3 games all season, just 4 to go. And this crunch match now with CCM, the defending champs, this coming Saturday night. Well, Central Coast Mariners got out of jail last night against Melbourne Victory. A 93rd minute winner means if they beat the Knicks this weekend, they'd go top of the table on goal difference. Simon Hill casting his expert eye all over this A-League showdown. Simon, we're down to just a few games to go now, and Central Coast last night. Well, what a dramatic way to keep themselves right up alive in this title race with what is effectively a decider this coming weekend. A 93rd minute winner against Melbourne City.
Yeah, you got to give them credit, the Mariners. They didn't play particularly well last night. I got a text from Jacob Spoonley last night saying they played 3 bad halves in a row after the first half. And he's probably right, but they found a way to win. And that's the mark of a champion club, and they are the champions, of course. So it sets things up beautifully, doesn't it, for the weekend with the Mariners hosting the Phoenix in Gosford. And I think you're right. I think this is effectively, it won't decide it on the day, but I think it's effectively a Premiership decider for Phoenix anyway. I think if they can get a draw or better in Gosford and then win their next game against Victory, I think they've got the Premiership in the bag.
These two teams, 1 and 2, though, you can't see either of them collapsing and losing one of those 2 home field advantage spots before the end of the season?
Well, the Phoenix's 2 home games are against Melbourne Victory and against Macarthur. Now, obviously, those are 2 teams that are both in the top 6. And they've got their own need for points. The Mariners' other home game is against Adelaide United, who are not in the 6 at the moment. So I don't think there's a lot in it. Obviously in this league, everybody can beat everybody else. But the 2 at the top are there for a reason. They've certainly been the most consistent. Wellington will have big crowds for those last 2 home games, I'm sure, which will help get them over the line. And for such an unfancied club at the start of the season, it's an absolutely remarkable story. I can only stand and applaud what Giancarlo Italiano has done because, I'll be honest, I didn't even have Wellington in the 6.
How is it being received in Australia in terms of the A-League that the New Zealand side is on top?
Well, you're assuming that we have mass media coverage of the A-League in Australia, and sadly that's not the case. I've been asked this question a couple of times, and look, the honest answer is I don't sense that there's much of a pushback. I think a lot of neutrals are actually quite happy to see a different club at the top. We've had Melbourne City winning the last 3 premierships. Before that, Sydney FC had their era of dominance. So I think it's nice to see somebody else up at the top, and I don't think there's much pushback from neutrals.
Simon Hill, who calls A-League for us. So the prestige in winning the minor premiership, of course, at the end of the season, whoever wins the grand final, that's the glory, isn't it? But what does it actually mean, this minor premiership?
Well, in our code of football, it should mean an awful lot more.
So I agree with you.
And to be fair to Football Australia, who used to run the competition back in the day, they recognised that a few seasons ago. We got rid of the words minor premiership with the emphasis on minor. And called it the Premiership or the Premier's Plate, which is the name of the trophy. They've started issuing medals for players who win the Premiership, which I think is a really good thing. And I'll give you the example as to why. Back in season 1 of the A-League, and I spoke to Ross Aloisi many years ago about this, Adelaide United won the then minor Premiership by 8 points. Now, in the finals, they had a bad day against Central Coast Mariners, lost 1-0 at home, and they were out. They won nothing that year. Their players don't have any medals to commemorate the fact that they were the most consistent team over, in those days, 21 games. And Sydney FC, who finished third and jagged their way through to the grand final and won it, are lauded as being the champions. And, they've got those shiny medals, those players in their locker. And good luck to them. The grand final is a part of tradition here. I've got no issue with the final system. But I do think that you need to recognise the premiers for what they've done. And that's why I'm glad that there was, that change made by Football Australia a few years back.
Call it now, mate. Who takes it out? I mean, this game on the weekend, I kind of think that when you're in the position of the Phoenix, that it's like a yacht race. You've just got to tack. Whatever they do, just do. If you're in front, just do what they do. Just a point is enough at this stage, just to keep elbow room.
Yeah, I think you're right. A draw would be advantage Phoenix very strongly going into the final rounds. With those 2 home games to come against Victory and against MacArthur, I think they've got to travel to Newcastle, who with respect, second bottom in the league. They should be okay in Newcastle. So this is massive. And it's been a long old wait for Wellington. They've been in the competition since 2007. They're the only team left in the current guise of the A-League men's who haven't won a trophy. Even Western United and MacArthur, the 2 new clubs, have won a league championship and an Australia Cup between them. So it's long overdue. And I hope they do it. As a neutral, I think it would be great for the league to see a different club lift some silverware. And a big reward for an unbelievable season from Giancarlo Italiano. If he's not Coach of the Year, whether they win it or not, then there's something wrong.
That's our podcast for today. Thank you so much for listening. If you want to listen to the entire show, 1 till 4, Monday to Friday, download the Platform app, and via Platform Plus, you can go back and listen to whatever shows over however many weeks at your leisure, at your listening pleasure. Platform Plus. First thing to do, though, is download the Platform app.
Devlin.
Unbelievable. Incredible.
The Platform.